So many of the families in my adoption course ask me about inducing lactation. That's why I was so excited to sit down with Alyssa Schnell. She is a international board certified lactation consultant. She is the author of Breastfeeding Without Birthing, and she is a wealth of information. Today, my goal and what Alyssa and I were able to talk about was helping you to decide if inducing lactation is something that you want to pursue and what's important to know about that, and that there's different I guess different stages of inducing lactation. There's different decisions that you can make to decide if it's right for you. So that's what we're talking about today. Today, we are talking all about inducing lactation. And I'm so excited to be discussing this topic because for so many people inside of my course and also in my Instagram community who are preparing to adopt, this is something that they really have a lot of questions about. So my hope is that this answers a lot of your questions. If you're new here, I'm Valerie Trumbauer. I am the creator of New Parents Academy. I'm a postpartum doula and a certified lactation counselor, and I help people prepare for and navigate life with a newborn. So I'm always talking all about newborns, what you need to know, what you can expect. And I'm excited to talk about inducing lactation today. So let's dive into my interview with Alyssa. Alyssa, thank you so much for being here with me today, because for a lot of the adoptive families who I work with, inducing lactation is one of the first questions that they ask when it comes to how they'll feed their baby. So you're an expert on this. You are an adoptive mom who induced lactation. So I think your experience is golden here. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Can you, just as we begin here, as a lactation consultant and as an adoptive mother, what do you think is so important for people to know as they even just consider this? Because that's where a lot of my course members are.
Yeah, so I want your course members to know that you have options. One option is to induce lactation, which means bring in some milk without being pregnant. But you can also nurse for comfort, similar as we would use a pacifier. So feed by bottle, most likely that's how you would deliver the nutrition, but the comforting could happen at the breast. Now, not every baby's going to go for that, just like not every baby's interested in comfort sucking with a pacifier. But that definitely is an option, and it's a very low pressure option.
Just stop you there for 1 second. So if somebody was going to do that, if they were like, you know what, this isn't my baby's primary source of nutrition, this is something that I feel like this is a great bonding thing with my baby. Are they going through the steps of inducing lactation that we'll talk about shortly? Or is this something like, is there any preparation needed if that's what you're doing?
Not really as far as preparing your body, but you might want to have some education just in general on latching and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first option is to do that, nursing for comfort. And then I think you were going to tell us another one. What's the other options?
So another option is you could feed at the breast using a nursing supplementer, and I have one here. Here's just an example. So this is one particular brand. So you can put your formula or milk or whatever you're going to feed the baby with in here, and then it's got this tiny feeding tube that leads right to the nipple. So here is my breast model. And so the baby can latch on to the breast, the nipple and the breast, as well as this feeding tube. This is kind of like your external milk duct. So if the breast is not making any milk, the baby can still completely feed or partially feed, whatever the choice is, at the breast. So it's a wonderful way to have that comfort and connection and feeding at the breast without any pressure to make milk. Now, if a parent chose to do this and is exclusively feeding in this way, that in itself could bring in some milk, but you could certainly do it without any intention or any pressure on oneself to provide anything. It's just really about that. It's more about the relationship. I mean, I think about breastfeeding really as having two parts. You've got the comforting, the connection, even the oral development that happens from latching at the breast. It's so helpful and important. And then there's the nutrition and immunities that come. And you could choose one or the other or both. And so my first two options that I mentioned are really about the breastfeeding, the nursing act, but you could choose to induce lactation. And that does take some preparation. And usually what that results in is some milk production. In most cases, particularly for someone who's never been pregnant and breastfed before, it's a partial milk supply, which means that there's some combination of providing one's own milk plus formula or donor milk. That's usually what it looks like.
Okay. So now that was super helpful. I think even just to see that supplementation, that supplementer. So where would somebody, I mean, is it a good idea to just get that and start this process? I mean, I think education is important and understanding that, but what would that look like? Like what does I think I want to get that? What steps should I go through?
The nursing supplementer, I love this tool. It's a really wonderful tool. There's a learning curve. It can be really frustrating at first because, well, especially if somebody's never breastfed before, that's a learning process to begin with. And then you've got this tube there, that's another piece of it. So what I tell my clients is if they're thinking about doing that, choose what type of nursing supplementer they want, get it before baby arrives, practice with it. So,
Get comfortable with your equipment before the baby arrives.
and I'm a big fan, if there's a partner, have the partner be the person in charge of the supplementer. The partner can fill it and clean it, and so that the nursing parent can just grab and go. And so it's not, it takes some of the burden off of it as well.
Okay, so now if the goal is to induce lactation, your hope, let's say in this case, this person has not been pregnant or breastfed. And for a lot of people, I think maybe one of the tricky parts, and you would probably be able to speak to this better, is when in the adoption process do you start this? Like when I first think of it, is that when I should reach out to someone like you and then you'll help direct when we are actually inducing?
Yeah, I mean, generally having several months notice is helpful, but it could, anywhere you're in the process, you can start then. So if there's more of a lead time between when you start inducing lactation and baby's arrival, you have more options, you have more of ability to bring in some milk before baby arrives, but it's never too late. So, I've had clients where baby's already arrived and like, oh, I think I want to induce lactation. Okay, let's go from here. And one thing that we are very aware of is that, so I work with clients who are adopting, but I also work with clients through surrogacy or their partner's birthing in a same-sex female couple. Those situations are so different because we know 8 months before baby arrives that there's going to be a baby on this time. It's pretty for sure thing. With adoption, of course, we don't really know when baby's going to arrive. And not only that, then we don't know what that lead time is between the adoption match and baby's arrival. It could be a few months, could be a few days or even less, right?
Right.
So when working with an adoptive parent, it's just really important to be flexible. So when I work with them, we put together a plan and then we stay in touch. So when there's an adoption match, we revisit that plan and say, is this going to still work? Do we need to tweak it? Do we need to adjust it to meet your now circumstances that we know more about?
So if this is something, and that kind of answers my question, but if this is something I think I want to do, but I haven't been matched yet, reaching out to someone like you that's a great time to do it. It's not like you have to wait until you're matched to even start this process. By having that connection and having already met you and know what that process is going to look like, it's easier. Like, hey, would call and say like, we've been matched. This is great. This is when the baby's due.
Yeah, and so the process of inducing lactation, I break into 3 steps. And the first step is to prepare the body and breasts for making milk, sort of a simulated pregnancy state, just like during pregnancy, the breasts prepare. And that's not a very time-consuming thing, and you can stay in that step for a long period of time. So you could be in that step while you're awaiting a match. Okay. And that's like, so you can already start the process of inducing lactation, but not in a very intense, time-consuming way. So you can sort of be in that holding pattern, then you get a match, you're ready to go.
Can you talk a little bit on a very big scale of what does it look like? Like, is there medication or herbal supplements? Like, what's involved in that process of inducing lactation?
Yeah. So the primary way that we bring in milk is through removing milk from the breast. And there's really 3 primary ways that happens. The breastfeeding itself, which obviously you can't really do until there's a baby.
Right.
Using a breast pump and hand expression, which is really just manually extracting, like there's manual techniques on the breast. And most people will do some combination. Most of my clients, I encourage to do all three, really in different ways, so I said there are 3 steps. We sort of use the different techniques in different ways in each of the steps. So that's sort of the foundation. You must do that in order to bring in milk. And then as far as herbs and medications, adding those on top of those milk removal techniques are going to help them be more effective, help the milk come in more quicker. So those are like your boosting or your supercharging of the other stuff. But just, taking medications on its own that's not the way it's done. Or herbs on its own. It's these milk removal, and then you can choose what you want to add on top of that. So some people may choose to just do herbs. People may choose to do pharmaceuticals and herbs, or just pharmaceuticals. And this is where working with an expert who knows, how to make those work with you to make those choices to fit not only your preferences, but your health history, and really your goals too. Like, is milk production super important to you? Or, it'd be nice to bring in some milk, but it's not a huge deal. Or, this is where we kind of customize a plan for each client to meet their needs. And then, as I said, with adoption, we make the plan and then we adjust it as needed.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So it's not a part that people want to think about a lot, but let's say that someone's matched, they're inducing lactation, and then there is a disruption, and now they're not going to be adopting, but they thought, the baby was born last week and things have changed. Can you scale back at that point, or now do you stay where you are waiting for another match? Can you?
Yeah, that's a really hard situation. And maybe I need some backstory in that. I talked about step 1, preparing the body and breast. Step 2 is starting to bring in milk before baby arrives, with the idea that after a person gives birth, the milk comes in like really fast.
Right.
But when a person induces lactation, it's really, really slow. And so in order to have some milk by the time baby arrives, we start sometimes actually bringing in milk. That's the step 2, starting to grow milk production before baby arrives. So let's say step 2 happens, the mom has some milk production, and then the adoption doesn't end up happening. Really, you have 3 options. One is, and you kind of even mentioned them, one is just to start from scratch. One is to maintain the milk production that you've worked so hard for already. And the third is something in between, where we scale back on milk production. So we're not starting from scratch, but it's not the intensity of maintaining that milk production that she might have been working on before. And this is where we just meet, discuss the pros and cons, the effort, everything. And a lot of times parents have some idea too of, I really think I'm going to get another match pretty soon. Or, and other parents, it's emotional too, right? It's not just your time, but you know what? I'm really ready to put this on the back burner, start fresh.
And that's where having someone like you, who I don't have to like research on the internet what my options are, I reach out to you and I'm like, this happened, what should I do? And kind of to be able to talk through what those options are with someone. I don't know if do you know the answer to this? So for a lot of people in the US right now, breast pumps are being covered. Are they being covered for adopting families?
That's a great question. So yes, they are. However, the breast pumps that are generally covered by insurance are designed for somebody with an established milk production. So like somebody going back to work, they've got their milk production, they just want to maintain it while they're going back to work. Oftentimes what we recommend for inducing lactation is a breast pump that's designed to establish and grow milk production. And that's generally something that's not
like a hospital grade. Is that kind of?
Yeah. I call it a multi-user breast pump. People often call it hospital grade. So something you would rent. Now, sometimes I have had clients get that covered through insurance. And usually what that involves is a letter from me or their doctor saying, my client or my patient needs this particular type of pump for this reason because they are inducing lactation. So that may be covered. I've also had clients still use a pump from the insurance company, even though that might not be ideal. This is where you have to balance everything, and including costs.
I will talk about it offline, but I'll put your resources down below so that people have that to reach out to. And if you have any other recommendations of places that people should head when they're even thinking about inducing lactation. Because I think what you've said is just such a great starting point for the people who have asked me questions before don't have very direct questions. They really just want to understand whether it's a good choice for them. So I think that this will be super helpful.
Oh, good, good. So if they want some more information, I have written a book called Breastfeeding Without Birthing, and that might be a great place to just see all that's available, as far as options. And I do telehealth, so I'm seeing people from all over the world.
That's what I was just going to ask you. Is it just the US or is it all over the world? And your book is how I even came to know you, because I do this adoption workshop and someone was like, have you ever heard of this book? And I was like, nope. And then, so I'm so glad to know you. I'm so thankful for this resource, and I'm thankful that you're here today. Thanks so much, Alyssa.
Thank you, Valerie.